Hello, everybody, and welcome. And today I'm very pleased to introduce Helen Walker, who has been the CEO of the charity Carers UK since 2018, albeit 3 weeks into 2018, if anyone was doing a pub quiz. Anyway, we were very keen to invite Helen on to talk to us because we've recently done a couple of interviews where carers have been the topic of the expert interview, one of them being around dementia and one of them generally as family carers. And I felt it really important to get somebody who really understands the issue, both at the ground level, so to speak, day-to-day caring, through to what's going on and speaking with the people that make policies in this country to understand what is going on short-term and long-term. So welcome, Helen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
So what made you choose Carers OK? Or I'm sure they chose you, but I mean, what drew you to it?
It's interesting, isn't it? I think when you look back, why did you apply for a role? I've been a chief executive. I've spent my entire career in the charity sector, so it was always going to be a charity. And once you've had the top job, if you like, the choice always has to be the cause, doesn't it? Because your role, my role, is to be the person standing on the podium talking about the subject, and you have to do that with passion. You have to do it with belief and understanding. So it had to be something that I felt I had an understanding of and that I was passionate about. So like most people, I have some caring experience. That's not what I talk about on a day-to-day basis. But it's always there in the back of your mind as a motivation. And like most people, I will almost certainly become a carer again in my lifetime, or indeed be cared for. So I think it's something that touches everybody, and it's something that I felt very passionately about. And also, I mean, we're primarily a campaigning charity. So you talked about that policy element, being able to change the law, being able to make fundamental change for people's lives. Is something that really kind of appealed to me, and at the same time have that operational side, provide the only national helpline for unpaid carers, have probably the biggest wealth of information on our website for unpaid carers. So it's a very diverse kind of organisation. We're also national, so we've got offices in Wales, in Northern Ireland, and in Scotland. So lots of reasons drew me to it, and they've all kept me here for 5 years.
So is there a definition of a carer? Because by default, many of us are carers as soon as we give birth to a child, or we don't have to give birth to a child. We have a child in our care. We are naturally a carer. Is there a definition of a carer per se?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult and we keep it very broad. So I wouldn't define being a parent, for example, as being a carer. I would if the child had additional needs. So, but we keep it very, very broad. So it can be anything from, collecting a prescription and the shopping for a neighbour, right through to 24/7 medical interventions where you are caring for somebody at home in a hospital bed with various equipment and district nurses coming in daily or whatever, or indeed not in the current climate, with a broader social care package. So it's very, very broad. It can be a disabled child, it can be a parent, it can be a partner, it can happen overnight, it can happen incrementally. Caring is vast and huge. If you want a government definition in order to be eligible for carers allowance, you have to prove that you are doing 35 hours or more of unpaid caring a week. And that gives you the princely sum of £76.75 a week. So it's the lowest benefit of its type. And frankly, it is wholly unacceptable. That's one of our biggest campaign asks and always will be. So if you need to define something, that's how the government would define it. For us at Carers UK, we keep it very, very broad. We don't exclude anybody, and we're aware that your caring journey will often incrementally increase with the person's condition. As I said, it could happen overnight. So your partner could be knocked off their bike and have life-changing injuries on the way to work. Or they could be diagnosed with something like multiple sclerosis, and and you think, well, you don't think, but you're on then potentially a 30-year caring journey, which will start just helping someone out with the odd thing that maybe they're not able to do in that first moment of diagnosis, through to 24/7 care and end of life. But that is an incremental journey that, and many of us, of course, see parents aging and gradually become more and more involved in their care, and that transition from child to parent, which is hard for all of us.
And one of the questions I was going to ask was sort of what challenges do carers face? And obviously there's loads of challenges. And I suppose one of the first ones may be even recognizing yourself as a carer, because as you said, if somebody has overnight life-changing difficulties, you realize straight away you're a carer. But for some people, they don't take that they do the role, but they don't take that mantle on because it's sort of slow, and they just think, well, that's what you would do for someone. You would help them. So I suppose one of the other things, just quickly to add, is that, you mentioned the very small benefit that I know that people have to prove that they care, when actually they feel they probably spend their whole life caring. To prove the small benefit is another challenge because of the work implications.
Yeah, absolutely. So that recognition piece, you're absolutely right. It's the biggest problem we face. And also the term carer, it's really hard, because if you remember, during the pandemic, we all clapped for carers. That wasn't the people doing it behind closed doors who were unpaid carers. That was people in the NHS. It was our social care service, and so on and so forth. So we often preface it with unpaid, just for that clarity piece. But it takes on average 2 years to recognise yourself as a carer. That's 2 years where you're not getting the financial support. It's 2 years where you're not getting the emotional or physical or practical support. So one of our biggest ambitions is to halve that time. It's a stated ambition of ours at Carers UK to halve that time that you recognise. So in the same way that, if you break your leg, you think, oh, I go to the hospital. If you become a carer, you think, where can I go to get help and support? And I think there is that piece, isn't there, where if someone is diagnosed with an illness, you don't instantly think, I've become a carer. You think, I need to look into that illness and find out everything about it. So whatever it may be. And it's time down the line where things probably are getting really difficult for you. Maybe you're thinking, I can't continue to juggle work and care. I'm going to have to give it up. What does that mean? What does that mean for me financially? What does that mean in terms of asking my employer for flexibility? It may be that you're just emotionally or physically exhausted by a sort of a very sudden and dramatic kind of caring journey beginning. But again, I don't think it's something that you instantly recognise. And I think that's something that we want to get more into the national psyche even. It's kind of like the moment you become a carer, you're aware of it, you're fully comfortable with that term. It doesn't make you any less of a wife or a husband or a daughter or a friend. It just means that you're a carer as well as those things. And that's something that you need to recognise, and the person that you're looking after needs to recognise, and both be comfortable with. So recognition is huge, and it's very, very difficult. So that's something that, things like this, it's really important for me to be talking about being a carer, recognising that you are, and also directing people to where you can get help and support. So most of the condition charities will have a section for carers on their website. But Carers UK has a wealth of resources on our website. There's all sorts of places that we can signpost you to, that we can help you with. We've got the only national helpline, and that's both, a telephone helpline, but actually even better is the email helpline, where you'll get a very bespoke response, usually about benefits. People really struggle with the benefit system because, frankly, it's a nightmare. So we're a first point of call there. And I'd like people to be able to say, yes, I'm a carer, let me go and get some help.
And I suppose what would you say is the thing that people most want care? And likewise, what is the thing that is most lacking for carers?
Well, what people most want, I think they want equality, they want support, and they want recognition. I think, all of those things, are, it's a pretty massive package. Right now, I think, we came out of the pandemic where social care pretty much closed down overnight. So respite centres, for example, suddenly closed. People were doing it behind closed doors. There was no break. We then segued kind of seamlessly into a cost of living crisis. Many of the respite centres haven't reopened. Social care is under extraordinary pressure. So even if you're entitled to a social care package, you might not get it, and not in its full entirety. And people just simply haven't had a break for years. The cost of living crisis has had a massive impact in terms of the financial well-being of unpaid carers. So if you have to give up work for care in order to care, that 35 hours a week that you prove carers allowance, £76.75 a week. I think it's what does that equate to? £2.20 an hour? That's, it's not enough to live on in the current climate. Carers are skipping meals themselves. They're using food banks. They're switching off lights. They can't switch off an oxygen machine because the person they care for needs it on 24/7. So where do they make cuts? So financially, they are in dire straits, and that then puts a huge impact on their mental well-being. And so they're massively struggling with their own health and well-being. Many carers tell us on top of that they're waiting over a year for their own treatment in the NHS. Now, if you're waiting for a hip replacement and you're turning someone 2 or 3 times in the night because of whatever their condition is, you're in extraordinary pain. It's impacting on your ability to care safely and your ability to care well. So there are a lot of things that are really impacting unpaid carers right now. So, and then that equality piece, that desire to be recognised. So we've had a massive win this year with the Carers Leave Act. That comes into force on the 6th of April this year. It's 5 days unpaid carers leave that you're entitled to from day one. Now, that doesn't sound very much, and it isn't. I mean, we'd love it to be 10 days, we'd love it to be paid. But every employer in the country now has to recognise unpaid carers in their workplace. They have to have a policy that says this is how you ask for unpaid carers leave. This is what the law requires you to do. And that's a step change, because that means people can talk about it comfortably in the workplace. They're not afraid to say, I have to take mum to a hospital appointment next Thursday. Can I have the afternoon off? Now, that is kind of, 25 years worth of campaigning. It takes a long time to change the law, but it is really, really fundamental for unpaid carers. So we're little baby steps towards that equality piece, and thinking of it almost in terms of caring as a protected characteristic, so that employers are thinking, we don't want to lose these people in our workplace just because they've got a caring responsibility at home. It may have come on suddenly, it may be incremental, it may be short term, it may be long term, but we don't want to lose them because they're, we've invested in these people. They're, probably on average, the 40s to 60s bracket, that's the starting point. So why would we lose those people in our workplace? So that equality piece and supporting them in employment is a big step change. And I'd like to, really make sure that we promote that and make sure people realise that it is now, or will be from April, their right.
Funny enough, I saw that the other day, and not being somebody who's close to it, I was thinking, you're joking, surely that's available. I mean, I'm sure that people who aren't in the know, like myself, just go, surely people can have time off work. That's, okay, not paid. I kind of sort of get that, but I was really shocked at how, that there was, as you said, your enthusiasm for the 5 days. You think, oh my goodness, it makes you realise how kind of archaic, certain things we have where we've pushed on in supporting people and can give them resources, but it seems that the carers have been left way behind in moving forward.
Yes, so, absolutely.
And work, I just find it's very short-sighted, I presume. Well, it is, knowing I've been an employer myself, to, people between 40 to 60, you do not want to lose. They're the ones with the knowledge. They're the ones that can support the younger people coming out and work. And I find it amazing that that employers don't do that much. Well, presumably some of them do, and some of them don't.
So there are some exemplary employers, and we run a forum called Employers for Carers, where we have a number of members, 230 members who range from very large corporates to local authorities to very small companies who actually have exemplary policies and will have 10 days paid care leave, if not more. But just going back to that kind of age range, so you've got a 50-50 chance of becoming a carer by the time you're 50. There's a big gender disparity though. That's 46 if you're a woman and 57 if you're a man. So there's an 11-year disparity. But those are the people that you've invested most in. And we are living in an environment where I can guarantee you that pretty much any chief executive in any sector right now will say their biggest headache is recruitment and retention, because there simply aren't enough people out there working for us to recruit. And so why wouldn't you retain the carers in your workplace? You really want them. And actually, you learn an awful lot when you're on a caring journey, not least the tenacity to be on the phone to social services for hours at a time to get the help and support that you're entitled to. Wouldn't you want that person in your workplace? I would. So I think you know, there's the equality piece in terms of women in particular. We need to really make sure that we nail that one. But we need to get this message out to employers that they now have to do that. We've got the Flexible Working Act coming in at exactly the same time in April. So day one rights to ask for flexible working. That will also have a big impact to support unpaid carers, because flexibility is what you need. You know, it's not about, you know, being sat at your desk from 9 to 5. It's about whether you deliver the job. Now, of course, there are some roles in the NHS, for example, that you can't do from, you know, from home, but you can still have some sort of flexibility within the workplace. And it's just working out how that works with different roles in different organisations.
Because I would see for most carers, they, you know, especially if they've already lost one income, for example, then it's absolutely essential for the other person who's the carer to keep their job as well. And, you know, and people are very grateful if an employer can help them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does get very rewarded by loyalty and good work and things like that. So what is the Flexibility Act?
So the Flexibility Act is a day one right to request flexibility in the workplace. So that's about your flexibility around your hours, where you work, etc., etc. So that will come in at the same time as the Carers Leave Act, and that is, as I said, 5 days unpaid care leave. The regulations, I think, are actually going through Parliament today to just nail down the nuances of what that law will look like. But it's just, I think it's the importance is that carers are recognised again in the law, and therefore employers have to recognise them. So it's a step change, but it's not going to happen, you know, overnight, is it? You know, it's like all of these things; it will be incremental. And our job collectively is to talk to employers. Our job is to talk to people about recognising themselves as a carer and asking for help. Because if you don't ask for help, you can't get it. And if you hide the fact that you're caring at home because you feel scared that it will impact on your career in the workplace, then you're just going to become more and more stressed and find the whole thing harder and harder. And that's why 600 people a day give up work in order to care.
Wow, that's a huge number.
Yeah.
And I can see that. I mean, obviously, it's going to be difficult for people if they're the first person in their company to start saying, right, these are the law. But presumably, you're behind them. So, for example, if somebody goes, right, they become a carer, then you can help them hold their hand, so to speak, say, this is what you're entitled to. And this is how we suggest you go about. And acknowledge the fact that for employers, it may be the first time they're going through this. So the employers don't know the rules either. Right.
And we're helping. We put together a resource pack for employers, which once we've got those final regulations will go live. People go, you know, companies can pay for that, or they can join our Employers for Carers Forum. So we can help them make that step change, and we can help them to bring in the very best policies with their HR teams. So yeah, absolutely. And yeah, unpaid carers will be able to come to us, and we will help and support them, and you know, we'll have all those resources and information on our website, of course. So that's you know, that's a big old change and something that we're very proud of.
Yes, And presumably, since you joined, these are the main things that have happened for the good in the charity, or what you've been pushing for.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I mean, the Carers Leave Act is obviously very significant, but there's lots of things that you know, I mean, we push, you know, we push back on carers' rights at the point of hospital discharge, for example. So during COVID, you know, there was you know, a move to sort of take away some of carers' rights. And we absolutely push back on that. You know, carers have a right to be consulted at the point of hospital discharge. They quite often aren't, but they have a right to be. And you know, so it's things like that you know, appear really small, but actually you have to push back, you know, constantly. And you know, we are campaigning all the time for you know, an increase in carers allowance, because it really, you know, it just isn't enough, quite frankly. So we're coming up to general election, and you know, our role is to get into everybody's manifestos, so that, you know, upgrade of carers leave from unpaid to paid care, carers leave, we absolutely want to get into every party's manifesto. A fundamental review of carers allowance absolutely has to be there. And then there's that broader recognition piece. It's about talking about it. It's about recognizing that there are, we estimate, 10.6 million people caring in this country right now. Well, if I was a politician, I'd think, well, that's quite a lot of my electorate. So I probably need to be doing something about it. So you know, there's a moment of opportunity, I think, in the next year for us all to get out there and start talking about caring.
And I think it's one thing that people just think, well, that's actually nothing to do with me because I don't care for anyone, so it's not my problem. And the one thing that I have learned, it actually is all of our problems. You know, it affects all of us in every part of our welfare system, for one thing.
Yeah, well, 2 in 3 of us will care in our lifetime. So you know, there's a good chance it's going to be you at some point. So it is your, you know, it is your problem, it is my problem, it's everybody's problem. But let's not, you know, think of it necessarily in those terms. Let's think of it about you know, making it something that is perfectly acceptable. It is going to happen. We have an aging population. We all know that. People are living longer with more complex illnesses. So historically, you know, a child that might have been born, you know, profoundly disabled might not have expected to live into adulthood, now is expected to live a full life and beyond, you know, way into adulthood. And you may be caring, therefore, for your entire life as a parent for that, you know, adult disabled child. So we have a very changing structure, people caring in a very different way. So as our population ages, more and more of us will need care. So we need to think about that step change we need in our social care system. We need to think about that step change we need in our NHS to support people in older age, to support people, you know, many people want to remain in their own home, don't they? So how can we create a system of social care that supports unpaid carers, that supports the NHS to look after people in a way that will maintain their well-being for as long as possible.
And I have to say, Helen, that having spoken to you, I feel rest assured that you're there fighting everybody's cause.
Yeah,
you know,
well, I hope so. We do. Sometimes it feels like you're banging your head against a brick wall, but you know, you have to do that. That's part of the nature of any campaigning organisation. But when you do get a win like the Carers Leave Act, you realise that it's possible, and therefore, you know, it gives you a bit more enthusiasm to keep up the fight and make sure that you make that kind of change. General elections are always a great time to do that. You can, you know, what does a government see as their quick win in the first 100 days? Well, there's a lot of people who are carers, so let's hope we can get it in their manifestos to make some change.
Absolutely. So we will put lots of links underneath your interview, our chat rather, and basically, as soon as you recognise yourself as a carer, and let's say that actually happens very, very quickly, go to your website and see what's around. And presumably you've, as you said, you've got a helpline so you can help people take them step by step, and I'm sure that you don't overface people, because I think it must be very overwhelming to start with. You know, where do you start from the general looking after the person who's ill to your rights? It's a massive
and
thing.
your well-being. And I think, you know, so we're also a membership charity, so you can become an individual member of Carers UK. It's absolutely free. You get a regular newsletter, you'll get, you know, access to our forum. Now the forum is peer-to-peer, so that's something that I think is really important for people, because actually quite often it's at 3 o'clock in the morning, isn't it, when you're at a point of exasperation, you've been woken up for the 3rd time in the night, and you just think, oh, is anybody else in the world going through the same as me? And lo, there you are online, and of course other people are going through exactly the same that you have, and that in itself is reassuring. You don't need to post on the forum, you can just read that other people are going through it as well. But we also run online care for a cuppers, so you can join that. They're run on, you know, several times a week, where, you know, other carers come online, you just literally with a cup of tea and have a chat and talk about your experiences, or the problems you've got, or how you struggled to get that particular benefit, or this happened and you don't know how to deal with it. Somebody else may well have done, or we, you know, one of the facilitators would be able to point you in the right direction. And we also do share and learn sessions. So some of those are very practical. You know, it might be about benefits, it might be about your rights, your legal rights and entitlement, or it might be a yoga session that just says, for the next hour, why don't you sit in front of your screen and we'll take you through something that's give you a little bit of relaxation, or a bit of something that's for you. Because I think the one thing that carers don't have is time for them. And I think that little bit of respite, knowing that other people are around them are also carers, is hugely important. So there's a whole raft of help there for them. They just got to recognise that they're a carer and then come to us and we'll help them.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Helen, for your time.
My pleasure.
It's great. Thank you. Bye-bye.